Liberty is too precious a thing to be buried in books, Miss Saunders.
Colonel, this is a uniformed dispatch rider carrying a marked case.
The American Revolution should not have worked. Think about it. A group of colonists, made up of farmers, and printers, and lawyers, and merchants, and blacksmiths, and ordinary people, decided to pick a fight with one of the most powerful military forces on Earth. The British had professional soldiers, experienced generals, better supplies, the world's most powerful navy, and the ability to move troops and equipment across the Atlantic. The Americans, well, they had courage, conviction, some very cold winters, and apparently a very high tolerance for impossible odds. So how'd they win? Part of the answer was not a musket, not a cannon, not even a battlefield strategy. Part of the answer was a message that could be captured, but not understood. A letter that looked harmless, a number that meant a name, a stain that only appeared when treated the right way, a clothesline that was not just a clothesline. And here's the amazing part. The same basic idea is still protecting you today. It protects your phone, your bank account, your passwords, your medical records, your online shopping, and yes, even your family group chat where someone is still asking, what time are we eating? So today, in honor of America's 250th birthday, we're going to go back to 1776 to follow a thread from Revolutionary War secret messages all the way to the little lock icon on your browser. Because before we had cybersecurity, we had spies, secret codes, invisible ink, and George Washington running one of the most impressive intelligence networks in early American history. Let's go.
Talking about gadgets, games, and gears. AI buzzing in your ears. Parents, teachers, kids unite. We're learning tech and doing it right. Oh, it's a tap, swipe, scroll kind of show where zeros and ones are ready to go. From old school DOS to robots that talk, we're jamming with Mr. Fred's Tech Talks.
Welcome to Mr. Fred's Tech Talks, where we make technology understandable, meaningful, and sometimes just a little more fun than it probably has any right to be. And I'm Mr. Fred. And today, for this special 4th of July episode, we are talking about encryption. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Encryption? Really? On the 4th of July? Come on, Mr. Fred. I came here for fireworks, cookouts, and maybe a hot dog that was sitting on the grill just a little bit too long, which by the way, I enjoy. It's all fair. But stick with me, because encryption is really a story about something much bigger. It's a story about communication and trust. It's a story about protecting important information when someone else is trying very hard to steal it. And that problem did not start with smartphones and Wi-Fi or the internet. It was there at the birth of our country. Here is something we do not always talk about when we tell the story of war. Now, I'm a former Marine major. And I could tell you, war is not only about battles. It's also about communication, but also it's a communication problem. Generals need to know where the enemy is. Troops need orders. Supplies need to move. Spies need to report what they've discovered, and plans need to travel from one place to another. And in the 1700s, there was no texting or email or satellite communication, no encrypted messaging apps. There were letters, and those letters were carried by messengers. They were riders carrying information across dangerous territory, and there was a huge problem. The enemy wanted those messages too. And if the British captured a letter that said where American troops were moving, that could change a battle. If they found out who was spying for Washington, that person could be arrested, or worse. If they intercepted a plan before it happened, the entire mission could fail. So what do you do when the message has to travel, but the wrong person might capture it? You hide the meaning. And that's at the heart of encryption. Encryption means taking information that people can read and changing it into something that looks meaningless, unless you have the secret way to unlock it. The readable message is called plaintext. The scrambled message is called ciphertext. And the secret rule that lets you scramble and unscramble the message is called the key. That is a big idea. Plain text goes in, ciphertext comes out, and the key unlocks it. And during the American Revolution, that idea helped save lives. George Washington understood something very important. He could not only win by fighting, he also needed information. So he relied on spies. One of the most famous spy networks from the Revolution was called the Culper Ring. It operated mostly around the British-occupied New York City area. And these were not superheroes in capes. They were ordinary people, farmers, merchants, tavern keepers, everyday citizens who took really enormous risks. They gathered information about British troop movements, their supplies, plans, and military activity, then passed that information back to Washington. But they couldn't just simply write it in a message such as like, "Dear General Washington, here are the British plans. Please do not let this letter fall into British hands." That would be a very short spy career for somebody. So they used codes. They used invisible ink. They used aliases, and they used dead drops. They used a code book called a nomenclator. That's just a fancy word for a list where numbers stand for words and names and places. I'll give you an example. George Washington could be written as 711. England could be written as 745, or New York could be written as 727. So if the British captured the message, they might see a bunch of numbers and strange wording, but without the code book, they wouldn't know what it meant. That code book was the key. No key, no meaning. And then there's the story of Anna Strong. According to the tradition around the Culper Ring, she used laundry on a clothesline to help signal information to other spies. So she would hang up a black petticoat, and that would signal the message was ready. Handkerchiefs sometimes would indicate a location, and she would hang those up on the clothesline. Now, I don't know about you in your house, but in my house, laundry usually signals one thing. Nobody wants to fold it. But in the Revolution, laundry could be intelligence. And that's amazing. But what about invisible ink? That was real too. Washington wrote about the need for secret ink. Messages could be written between the lines of ordinary looking letters. And to the wrong person, the page looked harmless. To the right person, the hidden message could appear. That's like spy movie stuff, except it wasn't a movie. This was the American Revolution. And here is where this gets really interesting for us today. The tools have changed, but the problem is still the same. How do you send important information through a dangerous world and make only the right person be able to read it? Today, we don't usually send secret messages with invisible ink. Although, I have to admit, that would make school permission slips way more dramatic. Today, we use math. When you send a text, log into your bank account, or buy something online, or even check your email, your device is constantly working behind the scenes to protect your information. It takes your readable information, your plain text, and scrambles it into ciphertext. Then the recipient uses the key to unscramble it. The same idea as the Culper Ring, just much faster and much, much harder to break. Here's a simple way to understand it. Imagine you and a friend agree on a secret rule. Every letter in your message gets shifted 3 letters forward in the alphabet. A becomes D, B becomes E, C becomes F. So the word cat becomes FDW. To someone who doesn't know the rule, FDW looks like nonsense, or possibly the name of a government agency. But if your friend knows the key, shift everything back by 3, they can read the message. That is called a Caesar cipher. Julius Caesar used a version of this idea a very, very long time ago. It is simple, but it teaches the basic concept. The message is not protected because nobody can see it. The message is protected because nobody can understand it without the key. Modern encryption works on the same principle, but instead of shifting letters by 3, computers use incredibly complex mathematical algorithms and very large keys. So large that trying to guess the key by brute force would be practically impossible with today's technology. That's why encryption matters. It lets your private information travel across very public networks. The internet is not one magic cable from you to your bank. Your information may pass through many systems along the way, and encryption helps make sure that even if someone intercepts the data, what they see is scrambled. It's gibberish. It's the digital version of capturing a Revolutionary War message and seeing numbers like 711 and 745 without knowing what they mean. Now let's talk about something you've probably seen thousands of times. That little lock icon on your browser. When you visit a secure website, especially one that starts with HTTPS, that lock means your connection to the website is encrypted. Now here's the important part. The lock icon does not mean every website is honest. That is a big distinction. A scam website can still look polished. Fake store can still have nice graphics. A phishing page could still try to trick you. So the lock is not a magic shield against every bad decision on the internet. I know. Wouldn't it be nice though? But what it does mean is that the connection between your browser and that website is protected through encryption. It helps stop outsiders from reading what you send, like your password or your credit card number, your personal information. That lock icon is one of the modern descendants of a very old idea. Protect the message while it's traveling. And that brings us to the part nobody tells you. The part that nobody tells you is this. Encryption is not only about secrecy, it's also about trust. Back in Washington's days, secrecy mattered. Of course it did. If the British discovered the names of the American spies, lives were at risk. But what Washington also needed to trust was the information he received. Who sent it? Can I believe it? Was it changed along the way? Is this a real message or a trap? Those questions still matter every day. When your phone connects to a website, it's not just asking, can I hide this information? It's also asking, am I talking to the real site? When you download an update, your device needs to know, did this really come from the company it claims to have come from? When a message is sent, systems need ways to detect whether someone has changed it. That is where digital certificates and authentication and digital signatures come in. Don't worry, we're not going to dive into full cybersecurity lecture here today. This is the 4th of July episode, not a final exam. But the idea is simple. Modern security is about two big questions. Can someone else read this? And can I trust where it came from? Privacy and authenticity. Secrecy and trust. That is the same human problem Washington faced with his spy network. He needed information. He needed to protect it. And he needed to know if it was real. Fast forward 250 years and the internet is still wrestling with the same thing. Encryption matters because of the lives we have on this digital planet now. Banking is digital, school is digital, medical records digital, family photos digital. So when you talk about encryption, we're not talking about some weird technical feature buried in a computer science textbook. We're talking about the system that helps protect modern life. And that's why encryption is at the center of some very big debates. Governments sometimes argue that they need access to encrypted messages to investigate serious crimes. But privacy advocates, they argue about creating a backdoor into encryption makes everyone less safe because a backdoor for the good guys can eventually become a door for the bad guys too. And tech companies are often caught in the middle. These aren't easy questions. Security matters, privacy matters, public safety matters, freedom matters. And here's my point. You don't need me to go on about cybersecurity, and you don't have to be a cybersecurity expert to be part of this conversation, but you should understand the basics because people who understand technology are better prepared to ask good questions. That's true for adults, and it is true for kids growing up in a digital world. The founders believed in an informed citizenry. People who could think, question, debate, read, listen, reason. That idea still matters. Maybe more than ever. Because technology is shaping our lives. And we should not simply shrug and say, well, I guess that's how it works. No. We should ask, how does it work? Who controls it? What does it protect? What does it expose? And how do we teach the next generation to be creators and thinkers, not just consumers? That is the mission behind Get Me Coding. It's something I'm really passionate about. Not just learning to code so someone could become a programmer, but learning to think clearly, to solve problems, to understand the systems around us, to build confidence, and to say, wait a minute, I can understand this. All right, so here's your tech challenge for this special 4th of July episode. Create your own secret message using a Caesar cipher. Here's how it works. Pick a short message, something like Happy 4th. Then shift every letter 3 spaces forward in the alphabet. A becomes D, B becomes E, C becomes F. Get the point? So your message now turns into a scrambled version that someone else has to decode. Give the scrambled message to a friend, or a brother or sister, or a parent, or a grandparent. Do not tell them the key right away. Let them try to figure it out. Then reveal the key. Shift each letter back 3. But I'm going to give you a bonus challenge. Instead of shifting by 3, agree on your own number ahead of time. Maybe shift by 5, shift by 7, maybe shift by 13 if you're feeling really mysterious and slightly dramatic. That number is your key. Congratulations. You have just created a simple encryption system. Is it secure enough to protect national secrets? Absolutely not. Please do not launch the Culper Ring 2.0 from your kitchen table, but it will teach you the big idea. A message can be seen and still not understood. That is the magic. And if you want to go deeper, look up the Culper Ring. It's a real rabbit hole in American history, and it shows how courage, intelligence, communication, and trust help shape the future of this country. 250 years ago, a group of people took an enormous risk. They believed that an idea was worth fighting for. Freedom, self-government, rights, responsibility, a future that was not guaranteed. And hidden inside that story is another story. The story of messages passed in secret, codes written by hand, invisible ink, numbers that stood for names, ordinary people doing extraordinary things because mission mattered. Today, the technology is different. The ink has become math. The codebook has become a digital key. Messenger on horseback, well, they've become data moving across the internet, but the human problem is still the same. How do you protect what matters? How do we know what is true? How do we build systems worthy of trust? So the next time you see that little lock icon in your browser, remember this. That is not just a text symbol. It's part of a much older story. A story that stretches from secret messages in the American Revolution to the digital world we live in today. Pretty cool. Thanks for spending part of your 4th of July with me. I hope your day includes family and gratitude, maybe some fireworks, and at least one perfectly grilled hot dog. And as always, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep building.
How few of the human race have ever had an opportunity of choosing a system of government for themselves and their children.
You ask me why I love her? Well, give me time. I'll explain. You seen a Kansas sunset or an Arizona rain? Have you drifted on a bayou down Louisiana way? Have you watched the cold fog drifting over San Francisco Bay? Have you heard a Bob White calling in the Carolina pines? Or heard the bellow of a diesel at the Appalachia mines? Does the call of the Niagara thrill you when you hear her waters roar? You look with awe and wonder at her Massachusetts shore, where men who braved a hard new world first stepped on Plymouth's rock. Do you think of them when you stroll along a New York City dock? Have you seen a snowflake drifting in the Rockies way up high? Have you seen the sun come blazing down from a bright Nevada sky? You hail to the Columbia as you rush into the sea, or bow your head at Gettysburg, or our struggle to be free?